Good afternoon. My name is Bill Heuer. I am a student of Dr. Sandra Jewell in Reading 510 at Marygrove College. I would like to thank you, Dr. Jewell, for your indulgence and all the help you've given me so far. I truly do appreciate it. Now, since I don't have a classroom available to me at the moment, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to imagine some of the things I'm doing. But it will give you an idea of how I run the classroom, the things I do, and what I try to do to help my students. Now today, we're going to be starting a lesson on opposites. This is to improve the vocabulary skills of the students in description, comparisons, contrasts, and such, so that they can understand a little better how to describe things. Now, I would also like to thank my cameraman, Joe, for helping me out today. He's taken time out of his busy schedule to help me, so thank you, Joe. This class will take generally 2 one-hour class periods, and I will break it down into sizable chunks for them. Because again, my students run the gamut from young people who just left a refugee camp or their homeland, speak no English, have had really no education at all, but are put into what the guidance counselors term age-appropriate classes. This doesn't do a lot to help them a lot of the time, so it falls on me to be the one who introduces them to English, to concepts that they may or may not understand. It takes a long time, and we work very hard at it. Now, I have a smart board in my classroom usually when I do this, and I can put things up from the computer or write on the board however I wish to do it, and I generally wish to write on it because I like to have the students write on it as well, and it helps them to be able to translate. So they would be walking in, and every student who walks in is greeted in their native language by me, which goes a long way, quite frankly, in getting them to, I want to say respect, but show me that they're interested in me because I have an interest in them. And we discuss their cultures and languages a lot. And I've learned smatterings of a couple of languages I didn't know. I'm becoming much better, much more fluent in Spanish because of the large number of Spanish-speaking people. I speak enough French that all the African students that speak French can understand me. I can greet students in Burmese, in Hindi, in Arabic, and I find that this gives me an edge over just about every other teacher in the classroom. Now they will come in, be greeted by me as I'm writing on the board. Today I'm going to start with family words, but the lesson itself is on opposites. Now we have done families before, and the words that I would put on the board: father, boy, man, wife, sister, girl, brother, husband, uncle, aunt. I never use more than 10 at a time, but we will be later on in the lesson using another 10 that will be different from family settings. This would be the time I invite the students who are higher level functioning in English to come up to the board and translate the words into their language for the students that speak their language who don't understand enough English to be taking part in it. Each student is required to write down in their notebook word bank the words and the appropriate word in their native language. So in effect, they're making their own dictionaries, and they like that very much. It helps them a great deal. Okay, so we will discuss this. We will review and go over what we've already done with these people so that they're activating their prior knowledge, and we talk about families. I will also ask them how they are, what happened last night, is everybody okay? Sometimes I have to check, quite frankly, for frostbite in winter because some of these children, their families are so poor they can't afford gloves. Sometimes they will wear sandals in the middle of winter, and I make sure that we locate gloves, winter jackets, appropriate footwear for them if they don't have it. Sometimes I've taken up a collection from other teachers to buy them. Sometimes other teachers aren't around and I take a collection up from myself and buy them for that. This just has to be done. There's no other way to do it. So anyway, we will be at the point then where all of these words will be translated into as many as 15 languages, and I make sure that I check their word banks every week so that I know that they're just concentrating on their language and the English. I had one young man from Burma who was trying to learn Spanish as well. He got really confused and we had to stop that. So I check their word banks every week, give them a certain amount of points for them, and they know that they have to do this. Now, after this, I would put up my document camera, and maybe, in this case, I put up a picture of my family, my father, mother, brothers, and sisters. And I will ask these kids, because we had talked about it, okay, who's this guy here? Well, that would be your father. Is there any other way to describe him? Well, yes, he's a man. Okay, good. We will continue throughout my family. Two over here, the males, those would be my brothers. Girls over here, these would be my sisters. So they're familiar with my family, and I figured I should bring in pictures of my family instead of using anybody else's. Once we get that done, and everybody understands the role of these people in the families and can relate it to their own, then we go into what the Spanish kids call opuestos, opposites. And I'll say, okay, I'll put up pictures of people. Here's a man. What do you suppose the opposite of a man is? Well, lots of kids raised their hand. Woman. Excellent. Perfect. Good job. How about this family member of mine here? Who would that be? Well, is it your sister? Yes, very good. Or it could be a girl. Remember, your sisters are always girls. Your brothers are always boys. Now here's my mother. Who is the opposite of my mother? Well, there will be several hands raised. Mostly the higher functioning English speakers would want to answer, but I'll try to call on somebody who maybe doesn't know that much. The opposite of my mother. Who would that be? Bali. That's right, my father. Why? He is explained. Well, the opposite of a man is a woman. Your father is a man, so the opposite of your father is your mother. And we continue this. There are always discussions that go with this, but we will work and work and work until they understand that the opposite of boy is girl, the opposite of man is woman, the opposite of brother is sister, etc. We'll do this for probably half the class the first time. Okay? Then I will introduce some new words, some of which they have seen, some of which they have not seen. And we will continue talking about opposites. For example, I might write, try to use words, again, that we have already used so that they understand most of them and have them all in their word banks. I can also tell from this whether they are studying their word banks or not. So, for example, I might write top. And I might write over here ceiling. And then I might write near. Something like inside, bottom, floor. Okay? Then again, I will invite the students who can translate to come up, translate any new words on the board that we have, so that the students can again write them in their word banks, learn them, study them. Okay? Now, this can get to be time consuming, but I think it's important enough that we take our time and do it right. Occasionally there will be comments on something concerning what we're doing, but the students are always paying attention and always doing what I ask. Almost always. Nobody does it always. We know this. So then I'll show some pictures again after they've gotten all these other words, top, bottom, ceiling, floor. And we will discuss differences, opposites. I will stand up in the front of the room, and I have been known to call in another teacher and ask, for instance, the students, okay, how are we opposites? The students will say, well, you're a man, she's a woman, you're tall, she's short. Simple things like this, but it gets them thinking in the right way. And that's what I want them to do. This takes a little bit of time, and quite frankly, the students really enjoy it because they get to laugh. One said, for instance, well, you're old, she's young. Class got a big kick out of that. We had fun with it, and I said, yeah, that's right. Very good. We continue on like this till I'm sure that most of the students have it. And I will make sure that the ones who don't get special work in their small groups with me or with one of my bilingual aides who are a godsend in this classroom, because they speak some of the languages the students speak that I don't speak. So then I would break them down into groups. I would hand out for the students who haven't been there as long, I will hand out worksheets on opposites. This will be included in my assignment. It will go over most of the words that all of the words that we have covered in that particular lesson on the board. And the students that are low functioning in English, myself or one of the aides will work with them, getting them to decode the words. Sometimes we have the reading specialist come in. That helps a great deal, but she is awfully busy and doesn't often get in. But we will have the lower functioning students do the worksheets as a group and have everybody go through the group, read the answers, tell why they're opposites or how they're opposites, and this continues with this group until everybody seems to have the idea. Now, the intermediate group that I will have will be doing something a little bit different. Yes, they will be doing the worksheets, but they will be doing the worksheets individually, and we'll be discussing them when they're done, learning what mistakes they made, what they need to change, what they need to learn again, and their assignments. They then correct in a different color ink and hand them in, and that's fine. The highest level group, just to make sure, I will have them do the worksheets as well, and they do them very fast, sometimes coming up with words that fit but haven't been introduced. I always encourage that because it means they're learning, and I don't care if they're learning outside of class or where they're learning, just so they're learning. Okay? These students will then write an essay comparing and contrasting themselves with another student who displays opposite characteristics. For instance, black hair, white hair, tall, short. You get the idea. Now, Zamient, who has been introduced earlier, would be in this class, in this group subset of the class, because he is rather high functioning, and the thing that holds him back mostly when speaking English is his accent, which is Burmese, and unless you're listening very carefully, it is very difficult to understand. When this is all done, and this can take 2 class periods, sometimes longer, because of all the extraneous stuff that we have to do when we try to take care of these students and make sure they are all right and not ill or injured or anything like this, because remember, for so many of them, this culture is as foreign as it could possibly be. After that, we all come together as a group. We talk to the group about, okay, what did you learn? I invite the first group to read their worksheets, giving any explanations they can give in a limited amount of English, applaud them for what they have done, congratulate them. Now, I also, when a student comes up to the board and writes on it, they always get a high five or a handshake or congratulations for something, and I'm reminded that they know things I don't, which makes them feel a little better about learning, because I'm learning too. The next group will come up and they will also read their worksheets, but they will have a little more information and use a little more work in doing the opposites. And they know that I expect more from them, and they give it. Now, the highest group will come up individually and Generally, what I will have them do is read their essays aloud to the class. While they're doing this, often a child will stop them, ask about vocabulary that they've used, or sometimes spelling. I encourage this. It goes back to the principle of each one, teach one, and it works very well. Now, after 2 hours of this, I will take all of their materials that they've worked on and I will look at them and correct them, look for deficits, look for ways to praise them for doing it. And the next day, I will hand this work back to them, telling them all, hey, you worked really hard on this. Good job. You got a few problems here. That's okay. We can work with it. Then we will begin the review of the days before, the vocabulary, sometimes the syntax for the higher functioning students, their grammar, etc. And any of these students who just aren't getting it will be working one-on-one with one of the aides then. More often than not, they understand it and they can prove it to me by their spoken word or their written word. And I got to tell you, these kids are fabulous. They are the most wonderful students I could ever imagine. And if something doesn't work, goodness, I'll find a new way to do it. My objective here as a teacher is for them to learn to speak English, for them to be able to navigate their way around the school or the city, learn how to take a bus, learn the language of transportation, learn what things are that they can buy in a grocery store. I had a young man who came up to me and said, you know, the one thing I really don't like about the United States compared to where I come from, and he came from the country of Burma. He said, in Burma, I could walk outside the village and pick the fruit I wanted. No problem. Here I can't do that, and I don't like that. And I said, well, these are very, very big cultural differences between here and there. Students are always coming up to me with things like that, and we discuss them, discuss the cultural differences, because again, most of these kids are starting from day one learning English in America, and anything I can do to help them is what I plan to do. Sometimes I have to rewrite textbook materials in a way that the students will be able to read them and understand them. Sometimes there simply aren't textbooks and materials available that I can use for such things. On those occasions, I will stay up all night writing something for the students that I know they will understand. That's our lesson on opposites. I hope you enjoyed it. There are things I can do better. I continue to refine, reflect on my lessons daily in an effort to keep these students going and learning and functioning and becoming citizens. Thank you.